I'm going to stick a little bit closer to Earth. We're going to go to Earth orbit, and with a little focus on the International Space Station. And as I kind of gave a teaser this morning, I want to, in principle, address the perception, or sometimes the reality, of the conflict between science and Scripture. But before we do that, I'll introduce this. How many here saw the Space Shuttle launch? Anybody here? Oh, quite a few of you. Look at that. I knew there'd be a lot of NASA fans here for today's conference. The Space Shuttle was an amazing technological achievement, amazing rocket. Its purpose was to put up a space station. That was the original envisioned purpose. It was a workhorse. It launched 135 times. I think there were 37 of its flights dedicated to the International Space Station. On the launch pad, it weighed 4 million pounds. At liftoff, it produced 7.5 million pounds of thrust. 7.5 million pounds of thrust. And it took less than 9 minutes to get to orbit, after which you're going 17,500 miles an hour. And we'll see how these speakers do as we experience a liftoff. They burned for 2 minutes, and then we proceeded uphill for a total of 8 minutes and 53 seconds, actually, to get to orbit, to then get to this vantage point. This vantage point is an amazing place to study the Earth. And even Charlie this morning going to the moon, one of the pictures that he showed, and we've seen those pictures many times, is looking back to the Earth. It's ironic that over history, that many of us have aspired to go to space, to work as an astronaut. And ironically, when we get off the planet, the major focus becomes the planet itself. And so we're going to focus this next hour on the planet. And I'll give you a little preview. There's 2 things I want you to think about, or to begin to think about, and we're going to address. The first one is what we see in this picture of the Earth. And we know lots of things about the Earth. We live there. We all have different experiences. But it's objectively what we see. But I also want you to consider, as we go through this hour, why and how you respond to what you see. In other words, our subjective response, our curiosity, our attraction to what we're exposed to. That's important to understand the scientific endeavor and why science exists. It's what we're studying and why and how we study it and how we respond to it. To illustrate this point, I want to read you a quote. This quote, actually the original quote is in Russian, and this is my translation into English. From the rocket, we shall see the huge sphere of the planet Earth like phases of the moon. We shall see how the sphere rotates, and how within a few hours it shows all its sides successively. And we shall observe various points on the surface of the Earth for several minutes and from different sides very closely. This picture is so majestic, attractive, and infinitely varied that I wish with all my soul that you and I could see it. Notice those 2 elements in that quote. It's the amazing view that he is imagining, and his response to that imagination. This quote was written in 1911 by a guy by the name of Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who was later known as the father of the Russian space program. Now, how is that possible? 1911. It is a demonstration of a couple things. One is the ability of mankind, who, by the way, we know bears the image of the Creator, right? So it's unique to bearing the image of God. And the curiosity of those that bear the image of God to search things out, to seek things out, to imagine things. It's also a testimony to what he had studied. He was a physicist, heavy in mathematics. And so he knew the theories. He knew theoretically that all this would be possible in 1911. So it's an amazing testimony when you think about it. Here's another quote a little bit later. Using material ferried up by rockets, it would be possible to construct a space station in orbit. The station could be provided with living quarters, laboratories, and everything needed for the comfort of its crew, who would be relieved and provisioned by a regular rocket service. Describing exactly what my experience was on 4 flights to the International Space Station. We had living quarters, we had laboratories, we did a lot of work there. There for a long period of time, we were supplied by supply ships. And this quote was written in 1945 by Arthur C. Clarke, known for his science fiction writing. So we see this theoretical become science fiction and perhaps embodied a little bit more with the details, and then it becomes reality. That's an amazing testimony. Of course, it happens over and over and over again throughout human history. Now we take it for granted, this vision, this theoretical vision, and then later this science fiction, sort of like Popular Science or Popular Mechanics, those kinds of magazines had this stuff all the time, is now largely taken for granted if you actually know it exists. The International Space Station, we put up the first element in 1998. We finished it in 2010, and it continues to fly. We've had continuous human presence in space since the fall of 2000, so going on 25 years, longer than some of you have been alive. And it will continue to go for years to come, pending any unforeseen circumstances that cause it to be canceled or to terminate its operation. It's an amazing place in which I lived for extended periods of time, 3 times for 6 months, building it and doing the science and the other technology development that we do, and orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes, going 17,500 miles an hour. And we orbit the Earth. If you imagine the sphere of the Earth here, and this is the equator, we orbit the Earth at an inclination of 51.6 degrees to the equator. So now we orbit the Earth, cross the equator, go up to 51.6 north latitude, cross the equator, 51.6 south latitude, come back, cross the equator again every 90 minutes. So when we go a whole orbit, we cross the equator about 1,500 miles to the west of the previous crossing. Why? Because under us, the Earth is rotating at a rate of once every 24 hours. So over time, over days, over weeks, over months, we get an opportunity to study the entire planet of the Earth, except for the polar regions, the north and south polar regions. So it's an amazing vantage point to consider these things. Now, maybe I'll have a little bit more time later to talk about personal testimony, as Charlie related to his history with he and Dottie. But for now, I will tell you that I was a believer before going to space. So I went to space with this in view, with a biblical perspective of science, technology, humanity's participation in that, pretty good appreciation of the history of that. I knew about the prevailing conflict or the perception of conflict between the two. So it was a stewardship for me. So I went there motivated, with my eyes open, trying to wrap my arms around the questions associated with that. From that vantage point, it was an amazing, amazing experience. Inside the space stations, the equivalent of a volume of a 5,000 square foot house. So it's very roomy. And I've been up there with a crew of two of us, just my Russian crewmate and me, crews of 3, crew of 5, crew of 6. Now it's a crew of 7. International, with Russians, the European Space Agency, Japan, and Canada all partnered with us. As you see it on the screen there, it's bigger than a football field. Now, let me see another show of hands. Who has seen the space station fly over? Many of you. Those of you that haven't, that's your homework assignment. Go out, find an app, find a website for space station sightings and find out when it's flying over wherever on the planet you are. And if it's flying over and you have a clear sky after sunset or before sunrise, it's very visible. It's the brightest thing in the night sky with the exception of the moon. And it's especially interesting to watch it fly over if you've gone on the NASA website and seen who's on board right now and what they're doing, because it puts a human touch to it. But it's very visible, and I encourage you to do that. Take your kids out there to see it as well and get involved in it. This has been going on, like I said, for 27 years since the first launch and 25 years going on of permanent human presence. And it always amazes me how few on the planet are even aware of its existence. So I encourage you to get out there and get engaged with it. In the window, this is the view out the day side of the Earth. And again, we orbit the Earth every 90 minutes, and just less than half of every orbit is nighttime. Charlie mentioned there are no stars in the picture, right? Why are there no stars? Because the sun is shining. You don't see any stars here. But if you get on the shadow side, the night side of the Earth, then the star field is absolutely incredible. So the stars are still there, and they're just absolutely incredible. And what you see here in this picture, the gold arc on the bottom of the picture is the atmosphere of the Earth, which is a major component, of course, of, we don't maybe often call it this, but it's our life support system. The water cycle is part of the life support system, the cycle that turns over. And then you see the Earth below. Those streaks of light are city lights, so this is obviously a time-lapse photograph. And then you see the structure of the space station. And then it was very typical, not always, but very typical to see that red glow above the atmosphere. I presume that's components of the ionosphere and interaction with deep space radiation. Occasionally, get a chance to go outside. And as was mentioned earlier, I had the opportunity to do 5 spacewalks. I call it the ultimate skydive. And when you do a spacewalk, the planned time is about 6.5 hours outside. It takes about 6 hours just to get ready to go out the door, to get in the suit, make sure it's safe, everything is configured right, and to get the nitrogen washed out of your bloodstream, because you're going to go down to a low pressure of 100% oxygen. And then you open the hatch and go out, and you're outside for 6.5, 7 hours. And we needed to do spacewalks to build the space station and to maintain the space station and to deploy scientific experiments and that type of thing too. It was the hardest thing we do, both physically and mentally. Physically, because it's like threading needles with ski gloves on, and you're working in a pressure suit the whole time for that 6.5, 7 hours. So everything is physically hard. Mentally, it's the hardest thing we do because it's all choreographed. It's tightly choreographed. So you've tried to memorize every step of the way. You're working with mission control during the spacewalk as well to make sure you get all your steps done. But still, there's a lot of mental concentration that goes with it. But like lots of things in life, the hardest things also bring the greatest rewards. So a lot of great memories.